Red Mars. Closest to Earth in our solar system. In 2019, the first man set foot on the surface of Mars, John Boone, American hero. In 2027, 100 of the Earth's finest engineers and scientists made the first mass landing. Their mission to create a new world, to terraform a planet with no atmosphere, an intensely cold climate, and no magnetosphere, into an Eden full of plants and animals. People, plants and animals. It is the greatest challenge mankind has ever faced. The ultimate use of intelligence and ability. Our finest dream. There's a lot going on. We last left off with John Boone narrating. The first two parts of the book were narrated by different people in the first 100. And the third part of the book is narrated by John Boone. Wait, the fourth part of the book. There was Frank, Maya, Nadia, Michelle Duvall, and now John. Oh, we're in the fifth part. I knew that already, but fuck, I forgot. We're in the fifth part of the book, narrated by John Boone, first man on Mars, American hero. He is also now the first detective on Mars because it's been about 20 Earth years since the first 100 landed, and they all fought about, like, who gets to, like, do stuff. For what reason. Now it's 20 years later, and there's thousands of people on Mars. There's several cities. And John Boone is going around trying to figure out who the eco-terrorists are. And it's probably one of his friends. Because he's everybody's friend. And he's got real friendly with Maya. They've known each other since the Bubble Dome, if you know what I mean. And, oh, I'm turning green. Uh-oh. I really fucked it up this time, guys. Hey, Voss. Good to see you. Damn it. I don't want to be that brightly lit. I don't know why it's cutting off my head. Oh, wait. Yeah, I do. I do know. It's because the light is green. I didn't think it would affect it that much. The light is very green. So anyways, John and Maya, they went to this, like, bioengineering research, biochemical research, biochemistry, I don't know, they do bio stuff, and they were like, we all took this vaccine that makes it so that you never age, or not that you never age, they edit your genes, or they use gene sequencing and editing to give you a vaccine that makes it so that like your cell regeneration is like that of like a 10-year-old. And you know, like everyone who first landed on Mars is like 60 now. Like I think John is like 65 and still pretty active, and he's like, yeah, like I guess if you guys all did it, I'll take the vaccine too. And so that's just where we left off, and him and Maya took the vaccine together, and they had like kind of, it's almost like psychedelic, but it's like a psychedelic vaccine fever. And he's like looking at Maya, and he's like, damn dude, you were just a booty call, but you look so beautiful now. Let's spend the next 200 years together. 130 is the new 65. Let's do it together. And she's like, yeah, something like that. She just like giggled. And said totally. Oh, the fun of a green screen. This looks like shit, honestly. They even talk younger now. They're all like, yo, Maya, what's up? Isn't this sick? There is not a option for intensity. And I already tried some of the stuff. That made it worse. What was that? Oh, God. I don't think that's any better. Oh, Lord. I don't know what it was set to before. It ain't bothering anyone but you? Okay, sorry. When you expect to live another... Damn it. And it's hard because I can't see it while I'm editing it. What was it set to? Good enough? Okay, okay. When you expect to live another 200 years, you behave differently than if you only expected to live 20. That's the famous Mars smiley face. You you behave differently than if you expected to live another 20. Oh my god, I cannot read now. When you expect to live another 200 years, you behave differently than when you expect to live only 20. This they proved almost immediately. John spent the winter at Acheron, on the edge of the CO2 fog cap that still descended over the North Pole every winter. Studying Aereo, I hate that he invented a word. Aries. Why does it have to be Aereo? Because Aries being turned into like a word like geology, they say areology. But when they say like aerobotany, sounds like aeroplane, you know? Like it sounds like the root word is aero as in air or sky, not air as in Aries, another name for Mars. God of war or whatever. Anyways, I will now continue. Studying aerobotany with Marina Tokareva and her lab group. He did this on Sachs's instruction, and because he felt in no hurry to leave. Sachs seemed to have forgotten about the search to find out who the saboteurs were. Which made John a little suspicious. In his spare time, he still made efforts through Pauline. That's like their word for like an AI program. He still made efforts through Pauline, concentrating on the areas he had been working on before Acheron. Travel records, mostly. And then employment records of all the people that had traveled to the area where the sabotages had taken place. Presumably, there were a lot of people involved, so individual travel records might not tell him much. But everyone on Mars had been sent there by an organization, and by checking which organizations had sent people to the relevant places, he hoped to get some indications. It was a messy business, and he had to rely on Pauline not only for statistics, but advice, which was worrying. The rest of the time, he studied a branch of aerobotany in which all the payoffs were at least a decade away. Or at least decades away. Why not? He had the time, and might very well see the fruits of the work. So he watched Marina's group design a new tree, studying with them and doing their lab work, washing glassware and the like. The tree was designed to serve as the canopy of a multi-layered forest, which they hoped to grow on the dunes of Vastidus Borealis. It was based on a sequoia. It was based on a sequoia genome, but they wanted trees even bigger than sequoias, perhaps 200 meters tall, with a trunk 50 meters in diameter at the base. Their bark would stay frozen most of the time, and their broad leaves, which would probably look as if they had tobacco leaf disease, were going to be able to absorb the baseline dose of UV radiation without damage to their purplish undersides. I don't know what tobacco leaf disease is, but they were going to be able to absorb the baseline dose of UV radiation without damage to their purplish undersides. At first, John thought the tree's size was excessive, but Marina pointed out that they would be capable of taking in great quantities of carbon dioxide, fixing the carbon and transpiring the oxygen back into the air. And they were going to be quite a sight. Or so they supposed. The actual shoots of the competing test prototypes were only 10 meters tall. Thank you, Seesaw. The actual shoots of the competing test prototypes were only 10 meters tall. And it would be 20 years before the winners of the competition reached their mature heights. And right now, all the prototypes still died in Mars jars. Atmospheric conditions would have to change considerably before they would survive outdoors. Marina's lab was getting ahead of the game. But so was everyone else. This seemed to be a result of the treatment. It made sense on the face of it. Longer experiments. Longer, John groaned, investigations. Longer thoughts. Areola is the area of skin around the nipple. And that is also why I don't like these made-up words in here. Because it reminds me of the word areola. But I never said that word, you did. I said areology. I'm just glad they're not colonizing Venus or Uranus. Let's count our blessings, people. Okay, longer everything. Because we're gonna live forever now. In many respects, however, nothing changed. John felt about the same as before. Except it didn't take an Omegendorf to get an occasional buzz humming through him. As if he had recently finished swimming a couple of kilometers. Or cross-country skied for an afternoon. Or, yes, taken a dose of Omegendorf. Which now would have been carrying coals to Newcastle. Because things glowed. When he took the crest walk, the whole visible world glowed. Stilled bulldozers. A crane like a gallows. He could watch anything for minutes on end. Maya left for Hellas, and it didn't matter. Their relations were back on the old roller coaster ride. A lot of bickering and fits of temper on her part. But all that seemed unimportant, floating inside the glow, changing nothing in the way he felt toward her, or in the way she had, from time to time, turned on him that look of hers. He would see her in a few months and talk to her on screen. Meanwhile, this was a separation he was not entirely unhappy to see. It was a good winter. He learned a lot about aerobotany and bioengineering. And in many of the evenings after dinner, he would ask the Acheron people, both individually and severally, what they thought the eventual Martian society would be like. And how it should be run. At Acheron, this usually led directly to considerations of ecology and its deformed offshoot, economics. These, to them, were much more critical than politics, or what Marina called the supposed decision-making apparatus. Marina and Vlad were particularly interesting on this topic, as they had worked out a system of equations for what they called eco-economics, which always sounded to John like eco-economics. Eco-economics, as in like echo. But it's eco? Depends on how you pronounce it. He liked listening to them explain the equations. And he asked them a lot of questions. John has a problem with eco-economics, but not areology. In the ecosystem. Yeah, he's like, that sounds too much like echo. Anyways, back to my areology studies. He liked listening to them explain the equations, and he asked them a lot of questions, learning about concepts like carrying capacity, coexistence, counter-adaptation, legitimacy mechanisms, ecologic efficiency. That's the only real measure of our contribution to the system, Vlad would say. If you burn our bodies in a microbomb calorimeter, dude, I swear to God, calorimeter, which is funny because I just brought up that word like a few streams ago. I was like, guys, calorimetrics are a thing. And everyone thought I talked funny. If you burn our bodies in a microbomb calorimeter, you will find we contain about 6 or 7 kilocalories per gram of weight. And of course we take in a lot of calories to sustain that through our lives. Our output is harder to measure because it's not a matter of predators feeding on us, as in the classic efficiency equations. It is more a matter of how many calories we create by our efforts, or send on to future generations, or something like that. And most of that is very indirect, naturally, and it involves a lot of speculation and subjective judgment. If you don't go ahead and assign values to the number of non-physical things, then electricians and plumbers and reactor builders and other infrastructural workers would always rate as the most productive members of society, while artists and the like would be seen as contributing nothing at all. Sounds about right to me, John joked. But Vlad and Marina ignored him. Anyway, that's a large part of what economics is. People arbitrarily, or as a matter of taste, assigning numerical values to non-numerical things. And then pretending that they haven't just made the numbers up, which they have. Economics is like astrology in that sense, except that economics serves to justify the current power structure, and so it has a lot of fervent believers among the powerful. Better to just concentrate on what we're doing here, Marina put in. The basic equation is simple. Efficiency merely equals the calories you put out, divided by the calories you take in, times 100 to put it in the form of a percentage. In the classic sense of passing along calories to one's predator, 10% was average, and 20% doing really well. Most predators at the tops of food chains did more like 5%. This is why tigers have ranges of hundreds of square kilometers, Vlad said. Robber barons are really not very efficient. So tigers don't have predators because not because they're so tough, but because they're not worth the effort, John said. Exactly. The problem is calculating the values, Marina said. We have had to simply assign certain calorie equivalent numerical values to all kinds of activities, and then go on from there. But we were talking about economics, John said. But this is economics, don't you see? This is our economics. Everyone should make their living, so to speak, based on a calculation of their real contribution to human ecology. Everyone can increase their ecological efficiency by efforts to reduce how many kilocalories they use. This is the old Southern argument against the energy consumption of the northern industrial nations. There was a real ecologic basis to that objection, because no matter how much the industrial nations produced, in the larger equation, they could not be as efficient as the South. They were predators on the South, John said. Yes, and they will become predators on us too, if we let them. And like all predators, their efficiency is low. But here you see, in this theoretical state of independence that you speak of, she grinned at John's look of consternation. You have to admit that this is ultimately what you talk about all the time, John. Well, there it should be the law that people are rewarded in proportion to their contribution to the system. Dmitri, coming into the lab, said, "From each according to his capacities, to each according to his needs." No, that's not the same, Vlad said. What it means, you get what you pay for. But that's already true, John said. How is this different from the economics that already exists? They all scoffed at once. Marina most persistently. There's all kinds of phantom work. Unreal values assigned to most of the jobs on Earth. The entire transnational executive class does nothing a computer couldn't do. And there are whole categories of parasitical jobs that add nothing to the system by an ecologic accounting. Advertising, stock brokerage, the whole apparatus for making money only from the manipulation of money. That is not only wasteful but corrupting, as all meaningful money values get distorted in such manipulation. She waved a hand of disgust. Well, Vlad said, we can say that their efficiency is very low. And that they predate on the system without having any predators, depending on how you define it. Advertising, money brokering, some types of manipulation of the law, some politics. But all of these are subjective judgments, John exclaimed. How have you actually assigned calorific values to such a variety of activities? To such a variety of activities? Well, we have done our best to calculate what they contribute back to the system in terms of well-being measured as a physical thing. What does the activity equal in terms of food or water or shelter or clothing or medical aid or education or free time? We've talked it over, and usually everyone at Acheron has offered a number. And we have taken the mean. Here, let me show you. And they would talk through the evening about it before the computer screen. Oh God, I thought there was a comma, but there wasn't. And they would talk through the evening about it before the computer screen. And John would ask questions. And plug Pauline in to record the screens and tape the discussions. And they would go through the equations and jab their fingers at the flowcharts, and then stop for coffee and perhaps take it up to the crest to pace the length of the greenhouse, arguing vehemently about the human value in kilocalories of plumbing, opera, simulation programming, and the like. They were up on the crest. In fact, one afternoon near sunset, when John looked up from the equation on his wrist pad and stared up the long slope to Olympus Mons. The sky had darkened. It occurred to him that it might be just another double eclipse. Phobos was so close overhead that it blocked a third of the sun when it crossed in front of it, and Deimos about a ninth. And a couple of times a month, they crossed at the same time, causing a shadow to be cast across the land. as if a film had gotten your eye, or you had had a bad thought. But this wasn't an eclipse. Olympus Mons was hidden from view, and the high southern horizon was a fuzzy bronze bar. Damn it, I almost had a picture of a dust storm. I almost downloaded one, but I didn't know if it would translate very well, because it basically just looks like a fuzzy picture, right? Like, I almost put a dust storm photo in this slideshow, but I didn't know how these would work. Like, right now, you guys could totally see it, but I didn't know, like, what this would actually look like while I was live. This is good enough. I wish I had downloaded it, because I literally could show you, like, a dust storm. They looked really cool. The pictures of the dust storm taken from, like, orbit look super cool. Because it literally just looks like fuzzy. like you got, like, dust in your eye. And then, but there was one picture that had really good contrast between, like, an area covered by a dust storm, and then the other area showed, like, that big trench. You guys know what I'm talking about? There's I can't remember what it's fucking called. The canyon. Like, the big canyon on Mars, and then next to it is a dust storm, and it was so fucking cool. But I was worried, like, you guys wouldn't be able to see it. And of course, now the fucking chapter is about a dust storm. Olympus Mons was hidden from view, and the high southern horizon was a fuzzy bronze bar. "Look at that," he said to the others, and pointed. "A dust storm." They hadn't had a global dust storm in over 10 years. John called up the weather satellite photos on his wrist pad. The origin of the storm had been near Thamasia. The origin of the dust storm had been near the Thamasia Mohole. Senzani Na. He called up Sachs and found him blinking philosophically, stating his surprise in mild tones. "Winds at the edge of the storm were up to 660 kilometers an hour, Sachs said. "A new planetary record. It looks like this is going to be a big one. I thought the cryptogamic soils in the storm startup zones would have dampened them or even stopped them. Obviously, that model had something wrong with it." "Okay, Sachs, too bad about that. But it'll be okay. I gotta go now because it's rolling right down on us now and I want to watch." "Have fun," Sachs said, deadpan, before John clicked him off. Vlad and Ursula were scoffing at Sachs's model. Temperature gradients between biotically defrost... Oh my god. Vlad and Ursula were scoffing at Sachs's model. Temperature gradients between biotically defrosted soil and the remaining frosted areas would be greater than ever. Oh my fucking god. I hate finishing a sentence and realizing I read it wrong after restarting it. Temperature gradients between biotically defrosted soil and the remaining frosted areas would be greater than ever, and the winds between the two regions correspondingly fiercer, so that when they finally hit loose fines, off they would go. Totally obvious. "Now that it's happened," John said. He laughed and moved down the greenhouse to watch the storm's approach by himself. Scientists could be so catty. The wall of dust rolled down the long lava slopes of Olympus Mons, Northern Oriole. Oh my God. The wall of dust rolled down the long lava slopes of Olympus Mons' northern areola. I don't know what that word is. Oriole. It had already halved the land visible since John first saw it. And now it approached like a giant breaking wave. A billowy chocolate milk wave, 10,000 meters high, with a bronze filigree foaming up and off it, leaving great curved streamers in the pink sky above. Wow, John cried. Here it comes! Here it comes! Suddenly, the crest of the Acheron fin seemed located a great distance above the long, narrow canyons of the fosse below. And the lower fin ridges reared like dragon backs out of the cracked lava. A wild place from which to face the onrush of such a storm. Too high, too exposed. John laughed again and pressed himself against the southern windows of the greenhouse, looking down, out, around, shouting, "Wow! Wow! Look at it go! Wow!" And then, suddenly, they were overwhelmed. Dust flying over them, darkness. A high, whooshing shriek. The first impact against Acheron Ridge caused a wild flurry of turbulence. I'm scared right now. Get into the basement, you fools. The first impact against Acheron Ridge caused a wild flurry of turbulence. Quick cyclonic twisters that appeared and disappeared. Horizontal, vertical, at angles up the few steep gullies in the ridge. And the general shriek was punctuated by booms as these disturbances hit the ridge and collapsed. This is kind of actually what it looks like where their headquarters is built. Or not the headquarters, the Acheron facility is actually built on a ridge, exactly like this. Dust storms on Mars aren't actually that powerful. If you were standing in the middle of one, it was feeling more like a slight breeze. Okay. Source. Also, are you in the Acheron facility? Okay. Are you accounting for the disturbances? They haven't even said how fast it is yet, okay? They didn't say it lifted us off our feet. It said the wind blew. Then, with a dreamlike rapidity, the wind settled into a smooth, standing wave. The dust rushed up past John's face. The pit of his stomach lifted, as if the greenhouse were suddenly dropping with violent speed. Certainly, that's what it looked like. The ridge had caused a ferocious updraft. Stepping back, however, He saw the dust streaming overhead and then off to the north. It has a thin atmosphere. Guys, thank you, Voffs. We said that at the same time, even though my stream is probably a few seconds behind. I literally was, it was like exact same time. It has a thin atmosphere. I could spell that sentence. Oh my god, is this everybody's first time listening to this book? We're halfway through it. I'm just kidding. If you don't know what's going on, it's fine. If you were standing on Mars in the middle of a dust storm, you'd suffocate in 90 seconds or less. Ugh, you're my kind of person, Roar. Thank you. Okay, I totally have to pee. I'll be right back.